Thank you very much, dear Commissioner, dear Director General, dear colleagues. I'm very, very happy to be here among familiar faces and glad to finally have this exchange with all of you in the Culture Compass and the Culture Framework for the European Union. Thank you, Commissioner, for your very clear words regarding the importance of culture for Europe and the many challenges the cultural sector faces today. I'm very appreciative of your commitment to strengthening cultural work in a collaborative spirit. I've also spoken to many of you over the past few months and weeks since I took office, and I'm aware that there is a lot of expectations to deliver for us here in the institutions. The launch of the Culture Compass consultation process comes at a time when we are navigating through global political turbulences like we haven't seen in a really long time, as you all know. The widespread pushback against diversity, inclusivity and pluralism we are all witnessing is putting cultural work and artistic freedom at risk. You mentioned it, Glenn, AI is changing the work environment and threatening creative ownership and also livelihoods. Civic and cultural spaces are shrinking, with some organizations being targeted politically. The stakes are high. A weakened cultural sector is a problem, and not just for cultural workers, of course, but for all of us. I really do want to be very explicit here, because I believe the topic deserves a clear language and also an honest opinion. There's a threat to our democratic way of life that materializes, among other things, in the curtailment of cultural work. In this atmosphere, culture has become a battleground. We are seeing the normalization of violence and hate speech in the media and political discourse, as well as online. Nationalist populists are using culture wars to divide people and create social fragmentation. One effect of this is that concerns me personally a lot is the widespread social disintegration and disillusionment with the democratic system, especially among the young. What we need is that in this time are resilient and also cohesive communities, good understanding of each other and each other's needs, strong narratives of unity and mutual understanding. And I keep repeating this. We achieve this not simply with a strong economy, but with a strengthened cultural sector. Today's conversation is very important in many ways. Of course, the Culture Compass will be decisive for the future of creative and cultural sectors in Europe. But this Culture Compass also poses a fundamental question: what kind of Europe do we want to build? What does our union actually stand for? Honourable guests, dear friends, I fear we are indeed facing a certain urgency here. The compass is not just a question of renewing continuation of the status quo. This is an opportunity. Now is the moment to create a strategic approach to the EU's culture policy, to become active as a defender of pluralistic cultural spaces and decisively support these spaces. Of course, the first concern is to make sure that there is no rollback and significant reduction of what the sector already had and also received. I agree with many of you that a dedicated budget under Creative Europe at the very least needs to be proliferated. Indeed, what we do not want is to gloss over the very real material worries and existential threats to the sector when it comes to planability, when it comes to freedom of expression, when it comes to access and representation. We do not just need a vision and a nice new narrative, of course. We want actual security, actual recognition, and actual progress. We want to see a commitment to improving the conditions for these sectors and taking seriously the essential importance of culture for our union. This is why we now have the opportunity to set very clear guidelines and priorities for this common project. First, we need to prioritize and guarantee artistic freedom. Artistic freedom, so the freedom to develop, publish and promote artistic works freely of idealistic restrictions and in line with the basic human right to freedom of expression is not always a given. We have seen the systematic suppression of artists and cultural workers in Hungary in the past years, and we need to take note that these developments at our midst. Artistic freedom needs to be considered an essential marker of democratic quality in Europe and also beyond. A strong democracy needs a free and pluralistic cultural and creative sector. The compass has to be considered a tool for democracy in Europe. And we do have a precedent for demanding and developing these tools. Last mandate, my committee, the Committee on Culture and Education, worked intensively on and shaped the European Media Freedom Act, the EMFA, to ensure the freedom of independence and of journalists, the pluralistic media landscape, and access to independent media all over Europe. This has been a great success story and will be a huge contribution to the democratic functioning of our societies. In the same way media freedom has been codified, we need to write artistic freedom into legislation. We need to monitor artistic freedom in the member states and embed it as a pillar of rule of law and our democratic system. Second, we need solid and sustainable funding for the cultural sector in the next multi-annual financial framework. Creative Europe has been the lifeblood for artists, creators and cultural professionals all over Europe. Creative Europe supports the cultural and creative sector, the arts, the film industry, cultural institutions, people in vocational training, independent projects in Europe, and many more with 2.2 billion euro. A budget twice as high in this MFF than in the previous one. This is an essential basis from which we must not budge into the negatives. Now, with the coming culture compass and the negotiation of the new MFF, we in the Parliament are fighting for a further increase to this budget and secure more than 2% of the overall budget for culture. Considering the geopolitical and societal challenges I mentioned earlier, and also the Commissioner did, it will be essential to financially strengthen the European cultural space and cultural spaces in the face of restrictions and hostile environments. This is a question of defense, a question of equality, a question of economic significance, a question of preparedness, and much more. Which means we will have to explore cultural funding streams in many cross-cutting budget lines, even beyond Creative Europe. Lastly, we need to develop a European strategy on cultural relations and understand Europe as a cultural actor. Our task is to create a common strategic framework for culture that takes into account the member states' needs and plans, but additionally establishes the EU as a recognizable cultural actor. If the EU wants to fulfill her own ambitions of becoming a global player, we need to foster and nurse a cultural relationship with other countries and third country cultural organizations. This must not be a paternalistic cultural diplomacy, but a foreign policy based in collaboration and mutual appreciation. Here we can build on our first efforts from the Council, the 2016 Council communication towards a strategy for European international cultural relations, and also previous preparatory actions, such as the European Spaces of Culture. Tomorrow we will all be celebrating the European Day of Creativity, so let me stress the importance of creativity and culture in our Union. Our creative and cultural sectors are transformative forces. They contribute to public debate, they offer critical perspectives on society, and they ensure a plurality of stories and voices are heard. Cultural creations allow for positive and emancipatory narratives to emerge and resist anti-democratic discourses that would like to impose a narrow understanding of culture and democracy. Dear Commissioner, I'm glad you're involving stakeholders thoroughly. I appreciate the commitment, but I must stress we do not just need a communication, we need a strong formalized stance from all institutions, and here you mentioned the declaration, so thank you for that. So moving forward, I will work towards continuing this dialogue. I will be in the exchange with many of you and will be seeing most of you at some point. The Cult Committee will actively put the Culture Compass on the agenda, and I hope we do manage to create some lasting change all together. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Madame Riehl, for this very, very engaged intervention. The European Parliament is a very strong ally for our work, for the Commission's work in the field of culture, and we have, together with you and the Parliament, been working very closely on many questions of relevance for this sector, including, of course, the topical issue of the working conditions of artists and cultural professionals, and your very strong support in support of the cultural sectors, and your commitment also that we hear here again today very strongly to advance together in the spirit of cooperation with strong ownership for the Compass is, of course, very encouraging music to our ears and very much needed. So a heartfelt thank you for this. And now, without further ado, I'm really delighted to give the floor to the presidency of the Council today, represented by you, dear Marta Jankowska, Under-Secretary of State from the Ministry of Culture and National Heritage in Poland, with whom we have been working so closely from way before the presidency started, and you leave no doubt of your commitment by being here also today. So delighted to have you with us and give you the floor. Please.